The pain hit me like a freight train while I was making mac and cheese for my 5-year-old son. One moment I was stirring the pot, the next I was doubled over on my kitchen floor, gasping for air. My appendix was literally bursting inside me, and I was about to die. But that's not the worst part of this story. The worst part is what my parents said when I called them, begging for help. When I asked them to watch my son for just a few hours while I went to the emergency room, they looked at their anniversary dinner reservation and said, "Can't you just take a Tylenol? Don't be so dramatic." Then they hung up on me. By the time you finish listening to this story, you'll understand why I not only cut them out of my life completely, but also why I stopped paying their $700 monthly rent, and why I've never looked back. Before we dive into the story, I have a quick favor to ask. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single twist in our revenge stories. We drop new videos every single day. Now, let's get back to the story. My name is Evelyn, and I've been the family's invisible safety net for as long as I can remember. While my older brother Mark basked in the golden child spotlight, I became the reliable one. The one who always showed up. The one who always paid. I'm a single mom working 3 jobs to make ends meet. I'm a medical billing specialist during the day, I clean offices at night, and I do freelance data entry on weekends. Every penny matters in my world. But somehow, I always found money for my parents. $700 a month went straight to their rent, another $100 for their internet bill. Car repairs, medical copays, grocery money when their social security ran short. I calculated it once. Over the past 5 years, I'd given them nearly $43,000. Money I could have saved for my son's college fund. Money I could have used to finally move us out of our cramped apartment. But I did it because I thought that's what family meant. I thought love was measured in bank transfers and sacrifices. My parents, Hannah and Taylor, are both 68. They're not wealthy, but they're not destitute either. They have Social Security, a small pension from Dad's factory job, and Medicare. They could live comfortably if they adjusted their lifestyle. But they refused to downsize from their 3-bedroom house. They refused to give up their premium cable package, their daily restaurant lunches, their expensive hobbies. Instead, they guilt-tripped me. "We raised you," they'd say. "We sacrificed everything for you kids." What they conveniently forgot was that they'd raised me to be their personal ATM machine. The favoritism was always obvious. Mark could do no wrong in their eyes. He's a marketing manager making twice my salary, drives a BMW, owns a house in the suburbs. But he visits maybe twice a year and has never once helped with their bills. When I'd mention how unfair this was, Mom would say, "Mark has his own life to build. You're different. You're the caretaker." Different. That word stung every single time. Mark got praise for his achievements. I got expectations to fulfill. Mark got unconditional love. I got conditional approval based on my usefulness. The pattern was always the same. They'd call with some emergency, the water heater broke, the car needed new tires, they couldn't afford their medications. I'd scramble to find the money, often putting my own bills on credit cards. They'd accept it without gratitude, as if it were their due. Then, the very next conversation, they'd criticize something about my life. My apartment was too small. My job wasn't prestigious enough. I should be dating more. I should discipline my son differently. I should dress better, cook healthier meals, be more social. Nothing was ever good enough. The irony is that I was already stretching myself beyond my limits. 3 jobs meant I barely saw my son awake on weekdays. I'd kiss him goodbye before dawn and tuck him in after dusk. Weekends were spent catching up on laundry, groceries, and trying to be the present mother I wanted to be. I was exhausted, financially strained, emotionally drained, but I told myself it was temporary. I told myself they needed me. I told myself this was love. The first real wake-up call came 6 months before the appendix incident. My son, Tyler, had been running a high fever for 3 days. I'd taken time off work to care for him, losing precious income. On the 3rd night, his temperature spiked to 104 degrees. I called my parents, panicked, asking if one of them could meet us at the pediatric emergency room so I wouldn't have to handle it alone. "It's just a fever," Mom said dismissively. Kids get sick, you're being paranoid, we have our book club tonight. Book club. Tyler could have had meningitis, and they chose book club. I spent 12 hours in that emergency room alone, holding my delirious 3-year-old, watching other families support each other while I sat isolated in the corner. Tyler was fine, just a stubborn virus. But something broke in me that night. 2 months later, when I asked them to babysit so I could attend my company's mandatory training session, they refused because it conflicted with their weekly casino trip. I had to pay a babysitter $60 I couldn't afford and explain to my boss why I looked stressed and distracted all day. The resentment was building like pressure in a volcano, but I kept writing those checks. I kept showing up. I kept hoping that somehow, someday, they'd see me as more than their financial caretaker. I wanted their love, not their bills. But love, I was about to learn, was never really on the table. The pain started as a dull ache on a Tuesday morning. I was making Tyler's breakfast, spreading peanut butter on toast, when I felt a twinge in my lower right side. I brushed it off. I had a full day ahead, 8 hours at the medical billing office, then 4 hours cleaning the downtown law firm. Pain was a luxury I couldn't afford. By lunchtime, the ache had sharpened into something more insistent. I popped some ibuprofen and kept working. The afternoon dragged on, each hour making the pain more difficult to ignore. By the time I picked up Tyler from daycare, I was walking carefully, trying not to jar my side. "Mommy, are you okay?" Tyler asked as I buckled him into his car seat. His little face was scrunched with worry. "I'm fine, baby," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tummy ache." At home, I tried to push through our normal routine. Bath time, story time, and then I started making Tyler's dinner mac and cheese, his favorite. I was stirring the pot when the pain hit me like a freight train. One moment I was standing at the stove, the next I was doubled over on my kitchen floor, gasping for air. Tyler started crying, scared by seeing his mommy collapse. By 6 o'clock, I knew this wasn't normal pain. This was something serious, something that could kill me. I called my parents while Tyler played with his blocks in the living room, speaking quietly so he wouldn't hear the fear in my voice. "Mom, I think I need to go to the emergency room. The pain in my side is really bad. Could you or Dad come over and watch Tyler? I just need someone here while I get checked out." There was a pause. I could hear Dad talking in the background, something about reservations and anniversary dinner. "Honey, tonight really isn't good for us. It's our 42nd anniversary, and we have reservations at Chez Laurent at 7:30. We've been planning this for weeks." My stomach dropped. "Mom, I think this might be serious. I'm really scared." "You're probably just stressed," she said, her tone already dismissive. "You work too much, you don't eat right, you don't get enough sleep. Have you tried taking a hot bath? Maybe some chamomile tea?" "This isn't stress, Mom. Something is really wrong." I could hear her sigh, that particular sound she made when she thought I was being dramatic or inconvenient. "Evelyn, you always think the worst. Remember when you thought Tyler had that rare disease and it was just a normal cold? You panic over everything. Can't you just take some Tylenol and see how you feel in the morning?" "But what if—" "Look, we really can't cancel tonight. This restaurant books up months in advance. Dad already put on his good suit. Can't you call that babysitter you used before? What's her name, Jessica?" "I barely know Jessica, Mom. I've used her twice. And this isn't about babysitting. This is about being there for your daughter when she's scared and in pain." "Don't be so dramatic, Evelyn. You'll be fine. We'll call you tomorrow and check in." The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Tyler looked up from his blocks and asked, "Who was that, Mommy?" "Nobody important, sweetheart." But inside, I was falling apart. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of that moment. My parents had just chosen a dinner reservation over their daughter's medical emergency. They'd minimized my fear, dismissed my pain, and hung up on me without a second thought. I called Jessica, the 19-year-old college student who'd babysat for me twice. My hands were shaking as I dialed. "Hi, Jessica. This is Evelyn, Tyler's mom. I know this is really short notice, but I need to go to the emergency room and I was wondering if you could watch Tyler for a few hours." "Oh my God, are you okay? Of course I can come over. I'll be there in 20 minutes. A teenager I barely knew showed more concern and compassion in 30 seconds than my parents had in a 10-minute conversation. Jessica arrived quickly, her backpack full of textbooks and snacks for Tyler. She took one look at me and insisted on calling me an Uber to the hospital. "You shouldn't be driving," she said firmly. "Text me updates, okay? Tyler and I will be fine. We'll watch movies and eat ice cream." As the Uber pulled away from my apartment building, I looked back at the warm light in my windows, where my son was safe with someone who dropped everything to help me. Someone who wasn't family, but who understood what family should mean. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights, triage questions, and escalating pain. The intake nurse took one look at me doubled over in the waiting room chair and fast-tracked me to examination. "How long have you been experiencing this pain?" the doctor asked, gently pressing on my abdomen. "Since this morning, but it's gotten much worse." "Any nausea? Fever?" I nodded, suddenly aware of how clammy and sick I felt. "We're going to need to do some blood work and get you in for a CT scan right away. I'm concerned about appendicitis." The word hit me like a physical blow. Appendicitis. That was serious. That was surgery. That was exactly the kind of medical emergency my parents had dismissed as stress and dramatics. The next few hours were a nightmare of tests, IVs, and increasing pain. The CT scan confirmed what the doctor suspected: my appendix had ruptured. I needed emergency surgery immediately. "Is there someone we can call?" the nurse asked as they prepped me for the operating room. "Family member." "Emergency contact?" I thought about my parents, probably finishing their anniversary dessert, completely unaware that their daughter was about to undergo emergency surgery. I thought about Mark, who wouldn't answer his phone anyway. "No," I said quietly. "There's no one to call." That might have been the loneliest moment of my entire life. Lying on a gurney, about to be wheeled into surgery, with no family member who cared enough to be there. But as they administered the anesthesia, my last coherent thought wasn't about my parents' betrayal. It was about Tyler, safe at home with Jessica, and how grateful I was that at least my son would never doubt that he was loved and prioritized. I went under thinking about the family I'd built, not the one I'd been born into. I woke up almost 24 hours later to the sound of machines beeping and the antiseptic smell of hospital air. My abdomen felt like it had been set on fire, and there were tubes connected to my arms. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure where I was or what had happened. Then it all came flooding back. The pain, the phone call, the surgery. I reached for my phone on the bedside table, my movements slow and careful. 17 missed calls from Jessica, 3 from my work, 0 from my parents. 0, I'd been in the hospital for 3 days. I'd undergone emergency surgery. I could have died. And my parents hadn't bothered to call once. Even though they knew I wasn't feeling well, and they'd promised to call me the next day to check on me. The betrayal hit me harder than the physical pain ever could. This wasn't neglect or forgetfulness. This was active indifference to my well-being. This was choosing their comfort over my life. I called Jessica first. "Oh, thank God," she said, her voice thick with relief. "I've been so worried. Tyler's been asking for you all day. How are you feeling?" "Sore, but okay. How is he?" "He's great. We've been having adventures. I took him to the park yesterday, and today we're making cookies. He's been so good, Evelyn. Don't worry about anything." This 19-year-old stranger had stepped into my life and taken better care of my son than my own parents ever had. She'd worried about me, comforted Tyler, and held my world together while I was unconscious. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I made 3 decisions that would change my life forever. First, I blocked my parents' phone numbers. Second, I logged into my banking app and canceled the automatic transfer that sent them $700 every month. I canceled the payment for their internet bill. I removed them as authorized users on my credit card. Third, I deleted every photo of them from my phone. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, I'd give them exactly what they wanted. The next 3 days in the hospital were strange and peaceful. Jessica brought Tyler to visit once I was allowed visitors. He climbed carefully onto my hospital bed and snuggled against my uninjured side. "I missed you, Mommy," he whispered. "I missed you too, baby. Thank you for being so good for Jessica. She said you were sick, but the doctors made you better. Are you all better now?" "Getting there, sweetheart. Getting there." During those quiet hospital hours, I had time to think clearly for the first time in years. Without the constant background stress of managing my parents' crises and demands, My mind felt clearer than it had since Tyler was born. I realized I'd been living in survival mode for so long that I'd forgotten what peace felt like. I'd been so focused on being the daughter they needed that I'd lost sight of being the mother Tyler deserved. When the discharge nurse asked about my support system at home, I smiled and said, "I have everything I need." And for the first time in my adult life, that was true. I came home to an apartment that felt different somehow. Jessica had cleaned everything, stocked my refrigerator, and left a vase of flowers on the kitchen table with a note that said, "Welcome home. Tyler and I made you soup for tonight." That first week of recovery was a revelation. Without the constant drain of my parents' financial and emotional demands, I could focus entirely on healing and spending time with Tyler. We read books together, watched movies, and talked about everything and nothing. On day 4, after having gotten home, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing on my doorstep, both looking angry and confused. "What the hell is going on?" Dad demanded, pushing past me into my apartment. "Our rent payment bounced. The bank says the account is closed." Mom followed him in, her lips pursed in that familiar expression of disapproval. "And why haven't you been answering our calls? We've been worried sick." I stood there in my pajamas, still tender from surgery, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. "You've been worried sick," I repeated slowly. Where was that worry when I was in the emergency room? Where was it during my surgery? Where was it while I was unconscious for almost a whole day? They both looked genuinely confused, as if they couldn't understand why I was upset. "That was different," Mom said. "You said you had stomach pain. How were we supposed to know it was serious? You could have asked, you could have checked on me, you could have called the next day to see if I was okay." "We had our anniversary dinner," Dad said, as if that explained everything. "We'd been planning it for months. And I had emergency surgery," I replied. "I was planning to live." The silence stretched between us. Tyler peeked around the corner from his bedroom, sensing the tension. "Go back to your room, sweetheart," I said gently. "The grown-ups are talking." "Evelyn, you're being ridiculous," Mom said once Tyler was gone. "You're our daughter, you can't just cut us off over one misunderstanding." "This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. You chose a dinner reservation over your daughter's medical emergency. You chose your comfort over my well-being, and you've been making that same choice for years." "We raised you," Dad said, his voice getting louder. "We sacrificed everything for you kids. You owe us." "I don't owe you anything," I said, and the words felt like breaking chains. "I've given you $43,000 over 5 years. I've bylaid you out of every financial crisis while working 3 jobs and raising my son alone. I've prioritized your needs over my own for my entire adult life. And when I needed you most, you hung up on me." "You're being dramatic," Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No, I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm being completely honest about what this relationship actually is. It's not love, it's not family. It's a financial arrangement where I pay for the privilege of being treated like an inconvenience." Dad's face was getting red. "You ungrateful." "Stop," I said firmly. "Just stop. You want to know what ungrateful looks like? Ungrateful is dismissing your daughter's pain because it interferes with your dinner plans. Ungrateful is taking money from a single mother while criticizing how she lives her life. Ungrateful is expecting unconditional support while giving conditional love." I walked to my door and opened it. "I want you to leave now. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't show up here again. If you have a financial emergency, call Mark. If you have a medical emergency, call 911. If you want to know how Tyler and I are doing, you can wonder." Mom's face crumpled. "Evelyn, you don't mean this. Were your parents—" "No," I said quietly. "Parents show up. Parents care more about their child's welfare than their own convenience. Parents love unconditionally, not just when it's easy or profitable. You're strangers who happen to share my DNA. You'll regret this," Dad said as they walked toward the door. "The only thing I regret is waiting so long to do it." I closed the door and locked it, then leaned against it as their car pulled away. Tyler emerged from his room, looking worried. "Mommy, are you sad?" I thought about it for a moment. "No, baby, I'm not sad, I'm free." That was 8 months ago. I've never looked back, never wavered, never regretted my decision for even a moment. My parents tried calling from different numbers for a few weeks. They sent emails that I deleted without reading. Mark called once to tell me I should be the bigger person, and I told him he was welcome to take over their financial support anytime. The silence that followed was deafening and beautiful. With an extra $700 a month, I was able to quit one of my 3 jobs. I have evenings with Tyler now. We cook dinner together, read bedtime stories, and talk about his day. I'm present in a way I couldn't be when I was constantly stressed about money and managing my parents' crises. I also started therapy, something I could never afford before. My therapist helped me understand that what I'd experienced was financial abuse disguised as family obligation. She taught me that love shouldn't require bankruptcy, that family shouldn't feel like a prison sentence. Tyler is thriving. He has a mother who isn't constantly anxious about money or emotionally drained from family drama. He has my full attention when I'm with him. He's learning what healthy relationships look like by watching me set boundaries and prioritize our little family of 2. Jessica became a regular babysitter and eventually a friend. She's graduating this spring and moving across the country for graduate school, but she taught me that family isn't about blood relations. It's about showing up. It's about caring enough to drop everything when someone needs you. The most surprising part of this whole experience was discovering that cutting off toxic family members doesn't leave you alone. It leaves you free to build the family you actually want. I wanted their love, not their bills. But I learned something better than getting their love. I learned to love myself enough to walk away from people who saw me as an ATM instead of a daughter. My parents chose a dinner reservation over their daughter's life. I chose my son's future over their comfort. We all got exactly what we prioritized. The surgery removed more than my appendix. It removed the last piece of guilt tying me to people who only showed up when they needed something. And I've never been healthier. The end. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more incredible revenge stories coming your way.